Hi, welcome to the Hibiscus Community Centre. Firstly, I'd like to thank them very much for giving us the opportunity to exhibit in this lovely space together. I'm Ashley and
I'm Leah.
Mother, daughter, in case there's any confusion. We work in quite different ways. The exhibition is called The Spaces That Connect Us. We are very connected, obviously, by the space that Leah was brought up in and I've lived in for 30 years, but also people from Leytonstone or nearby or, might recognise some of the places that we have depicted in this exhibition. So enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is actually a female nude and it is called Woman as Sapling. Obviously very different from my daughter's realism. I hope you can see the curve of the figure here, which reminded me very much of the small and fragile saplings, and I've spaced her in a landscape setting, which is a difficult space to read maybe, but we've got a sunset behind her and that comes through into her body and down into her legs and torso. So very different from my daughter's work, but both of them female nudes in a landscape. And over here, painting Return of the Pigeons, but it's only in the shadows, so I think shadow play by the locks. And again, I've tried to create that sort of unfathomable depth of the lock, but the beauty of the reflections and the water as it presses against those heavy gates. So it's beauty, but it disturbs me. I say it's exquisite fear. I always feel compelled to go and visit locks, and then I paint them from memory. All of my work I paint from memory, and that's quite important that I create that sense of space from my memory of being there and how it felt. This painting is called Do Not Go Gentle, of the poem by Dylan Thomas, and I painted it after I had a bit of a run-in with a brain tumour and decided to not go gentle, and I did rage against the dying of light. And this painting is about that sort of energy and will to survive. So in the centre of the painting I have that kind of battle going on, and then moving up to a darkness which I refused to go to. A lot of my painting is very much about scraping back and technique and gestural and almost a sort of visual form of stream of consciousness. So they evolve, and I do like to create texture within the painting. I like people to want to touch them. Although people say, don't touch the paintings, I actually want people to. And I want the painting almost to invite people to touch the painting, which I'm now going to do because it's my own and I can. So that is something that is quite important. It's the sensory experience of painting and the energy of painting that I hope comes through in my work. So, yes, do not go gentle. This painting might be a little more difficult to read. As you might have seen with the previous paintings, I get quite excited by paint and the gestural quality of it, the physicality of it. And this is in fact a pollarded tree. Another thing that I find beautiful, but kind of disturbing, that it seems to me almost like the tree has flourished and then has its limbs cut off, and I always feel quite upset for the tree, and sometimes think they're made to look slightly daft. So I have this pollarded tree against the light with the road sign behind it, and there is some red within that which to me symbolises the tree leading. So what I try to do is again create that physicality of the paint to give a sense of the loneliness of this pollarded tree, and again that texture, or what we call the haptic nature of the painting, that I want people to feel invited to touch. So the sort of sensuality of painting is about touch, sight, and interplay of colours and gesture and energy. And this painting I have called Can We Come Out of the Woods Yet? Obviously we have all been through the pandemic and being restricted, we can't go out. So I wanted to create a slightly optimistic painting so that we're leaving the woods into that beauty of the grass that I showed before and the light reflecting on it, and the sunset there with that streak of red which to me represents optimism. So this is very much about our present, and again that feeling of being in the darkness of the woods but being able to see the beauty beyond that of a space that I love and have been fortunate enough to spend time in during lockdown. So it's personal, but also I hope optimistic and reflective of what we've been living in. This is burnt oak and yaffle, and again is based on my favourite place, Hollow Ponds, and the experience of seeing green woodpecker fly past me and into the oak tree. We often have fires during the summer, grass fires, which then burn down the trees, etc. But we're very lucky to have really amazing bird life in this space that on the edge of a rural urban sprawling area. But So we have this fantastic bird life, and sometimes as I walk through a space, I'm aware of the flight of a bird going past me, and the colour just catches my sort of peripheral vision, and I'll turn to look, and then the moment it's gone. But again, the memory of it is there, and I recreate that memory and the feel of it and the movement of it. So this is movement, flight, and a specific memory and place. And this painting is called Flock, brackets, a wee like sheep, close brackets. And I absolutely love pigeons, unlike a lot of people who call them vermin. I think they're absolutely beautiful birds. And obviously we have a lot of urban pigeons in Leytonstone. And this flock are flying towards the church that you can see in the lower right-hand corner, flocking towards it. And I hoped in this to express movement and the beauty of the birds as they pass you and you see them going past you, and that collective space. So this is based on local image and memory. I paint very much from memory and not from photography or anything. It's the memory or the sense of space that actually inspires my work.
this is your painting of choice for that one?
Well, mainly because this is Hollow Ponds, which Leah and I talked about a lot, which we overlooked for a number of years, and Leah would come out walking Dylan the dog with me, so it's very, very special to both of us. I have to say that Leah was probably the youngest student at the Royal Academy. I had her when I was in my first year there, and I was on my own with her. I would take her in every day, and as she grew there, she would sit in her little playpen and draw with crayons and shove them up her nose. But it seemed inevitable that Leah would become an artist. She showed precocious talent, shall we say, and obviously I really encouraged her, and this space is probably the one that connects us most, Hollow Ponds.
Hi, my name's Leah. Welcome to the Hibiscus Centre for the virtual exhibition, The Spaces That Connect Us, by myself and my mum, Ashley. So I studied art and design at A-level, philosophy and English lit, and then went on to study foundation, which I really enjoyed, at Byamshore St Martin's. And then I was one of the lucky few to get into actual St Martin's, which was fun. And that's where I started this painting, which I kind of abandoned and then went back to. Onto these images, these two black and white ones. Again, we've got quite ghostly images. The kind of beauty in the composition of them is meant to symbolise the nostalgia that I feel for the areas, and then these more overtly speak about the people that have passed through the areas that have been forgotten about or been silenced by acts of violence or something, something morbid. But yeah. So if we looked at this image, which not only highlights perspective, it also is very typical image of hollow points, and just an area of forest, an area that does connect us, a space that connects us. If we looked at this, you'd see quite a lovely cutesy image of a couple watching a sunset, and it would kind of bring us into the idea of everything being beautiful, picturesque and happy and sweet. And the reason why I'm focusing on this one first is because I'm kind of looking at what goes beneath it and what actually happens in spaces. So, you know, there can be so many happy memories, you can have so many things that occur within just one space, and I was looking a lot at spaces almost having like a memory to them. So, you know, a tree having seen a ton of things that it would never speak of, but kind of flows through its leaves, and you know, the water having seen beautiful boats that people go past on and bodies float past. So, not trying to be too morbid, I'm talking about like life and death and areas that have been there for a very long time, and all of the ups and downs that it will have seen. That's why then I've kind of done more ghostly imagery, which kind of symbolises the people and the places and the things that have been forgotten, maybe, you know, things that have occurred, that have been in the darkness of a forest. And yeah, so there's kind of a bittersweet energy to these images, but it's just kind of focusing on everything that can happen within these sort of, you know, these areas of forest basically, and one that's quite close to my heart, hollow points in particular. So I started painting this while I was studying at St Martin's, and then I don't think I finished it, and I started to hate it, and then I went back to it last year and redid it, all of it. But it was very much a sort of key painting that explains a lot of my work. So where I've kind of got a quite typical picturesque nude in oil, she's kind of not really meant to be there, and she's kind of representing the darker side of the aeroforest that I am talking about. So I focused on the composition and the kind of picturesque beauty of it, or tried to, and didn't really like it at first, but tried to go back on it and get that, capture that, but also have a bit of a ghostly element to it, because is she there, is she not? Yeah.
Leah and I took this opportunity to sneak in another generation, and this is my mum's work. Her name's Heather Davies, so she's my mum and Leah's nana. And this space as well completely connects the three of us. This is a view overlooking the River Severn from the Severn Bridge, which Leah and I have travelled over many times to go to Wales to see my grandparents. My mum and my dad are both extremely creative and have encouraged us all our lives to be expressive and painters and artists. We're very lucky, very grateful to them. This particular painting of my mum's I absolutely love. It's the mud flats when the River Severn, when the tide goes out, and the tones of these paintings, these gorgeous sort of warm greys and the blues and clouds drifting by. And I think that, to me, works quite nicely with my pigeons, and again has a sort of sense of space and perspective. So yes, thank you to Heather and Reese Davis for giving us all our arty encouragement in our lives.
So we've got my lovely Nana's painting here, and she is, exactly where it all started, and why we are painters, I assume. She's very creative and works very differently to both of us, but has always inspired us to paint, inspired me to paint, and made sure that I had a paintbrush in my hand whenever I needed, despite the mess.
I remember my mum's drawings from when I was very little, one particular one, a drawing of a daffodil that was at my nana's house. And so Mum drew a lot when I was young, and both of my parents were, so Leah's nana and granddad, both of them were very arty and creative and really encouraged me. And so I was very lucky, and although my mum wouldn't think so, I think she's very talented, and I think Leah and I inherited her love of painting, and we were lucky to have her and my dad as inspirational parents and grandparents, very loving, very encouraging, and as Leah said, why we both became artists. So my mum's beautiful painting.
Mm-hmm. So after the exhibition, the spaces that connect us, you can move on to the online workshop, which is based on perspective. And we'll be doing a workshop where you can get involved, you can use any equipment that you've got really, pencils, paper. Ideally, if you have a ruler, it'll make it easier. We're going to be looking at single point perspective. This is a good example where you have literally a single point of perspective going off into the horizon. We'll be teaching double point perspective and foreshortening within the workshop. You've got some more subtle examples of that over here. So here we have a more subtle example of perspective, but it's still being used in the landscape to create distance. You can see the water going off into the distance and being touched by the light. It's all using perspective. So you have to have a basic understanding of perspective and spaces that connect us to create visual imagery that kind of makes sense to the eye. So yes, come on down to the workshop. on perspective and join me and my mum for a fun little tutorial.
Word in trouble. In trouble. In trouble. London.